It's day 3 of our 40 days of following God's will. Welcome. If you're not subscribed, remember to hit that subscribe button, like, share. Yes. Okay, so today I want to talk about how I got born again. So I know some people will camp here today, like, how did you get born again? I want to know. I'm one of those people who did not get born again in the normal way. I'm one of those people who doesn't have like a salvation story where I knelt down, started crying. I don't have that kind of story. But let me tell you my journey, my story of being born again, how I came to this point that I am. So it started in uni. I was in university, and backtrack. Backstory is I was born in a Muslim home. My dad was a Muslim, my grandfather was a Muslim. I have cousins that are Muslims, so that's why I have a Muslim name, by the way. It's like my official name is a Muslim name. So I was born in that kind of setting, but my mom was kind of like a Christian, because her father was a Muslim, my mom was a Christian, so she also became like a Christian that married a Muslim. Yeah. Anyway, so I started going to church when I was younger, even though like I had a Muslim name. But I remember that there was a time I also went to like this Quranic school, because I know that I know this Alif, Ba, Ta, Sa. I know that I know that part, but I don't really remember because I was really young. Anyway, I started going to church with my mom, obviously, up until secondary school. So from secondary school, I broke free. I stopped going to my mom's church. I started going to Redeem, RCCG. I wanted to change my church, so I started going with my friends. I can say that the moment I can say that I started, I said so many I can say. Anyway, the moment I became really serious with God was in 300 level. I remember in 300 level, I started going to a different church, Chapel of Light Fellowship, in school, back in school. I was always in school because I was writing ICANN exams, so I was always staying in school. So I remember that there was in Chapel of Light, they used to have quarter by quarter themes of the quarter, and I think that particular quarter, I can never forget it. It was that I may know him, Philippians 4. That is it, Philippians 4:3. Philippians, that I may know him and the power of his resurrection. That I may know him was the title. And I remember that the bishop would always talk about that I may know him. So he was always talking about building a relationship with God. He was always emphasizing it. And I remember just like, I don't even know how it happened, but it was a gradual process. And before you know it, I started getting interested. I remember that I used to pray that, oh God, there was a day that he prayed that the zeal of the house of the Lord will consume you. Let it be like fire in your bones. I can never forget it. And it felt like literal fire were in my bones, because I used to pray it a lot. I'd be like, God, let your fire. I feel like my own salvation story, it was God that drew me in more than I was one that went to meet God, that kind of thing. Because I can't really place it. And that's why I always say that, there was one of my mentors that said that, we are a testament of the prayers of our forefathers. So I feel like some people have prayed me into destiny. They may never meet me, I may never meet them, but I feel like that's what happened in my own case, because I didn't have anybody preach to me to say, because of course people have preached in the past, like, don't wear trouser. That kind of gospel, I have received it. Don't wear trouser, don't wear earring, you're a sinner, all of that. But they didn't really change me. They didn't get me. They didn't do anything for me until that particular semester when I started going to Chapel of Light. And that's why, as a preacher, as a pastor, you have to be very, very grateful to God for everywhere that he puts you. That bishop now will never know that he changed my life. I'm just this one person in that church that he ignited a fire in. He will never meet me, or he never met me. Let me not say he never met me, so he never knew. He doesn't know the reward or the result of his efforts. Imagine God told him to come to that church and he said, no, I'm not coming. It won't have had that impact that he had on me. Anyway, I digress. So I started, praying every time, let the zeal of the house consume me. I can never forget those two particular points, that I may know him. So I started reading the Bible. I started getting interested in the Bible. And then I joined in 400 level, I remember, and I'll join, 300 level actually. In 300 level, I joined, the youth fellowship. So there was a youth fellowship arm for students. So I used to go to fellowship once or twice. Then in 400 level, I became really committed. And I remember that what really transformed my life was speaking in tongues. I remember that they did a series about speaking in tongues, about they debunked all the mindset. Thankfully, I didn't have any like bad mindset about speaking in tongues. So I was open to it. And so when people say that speaking in tongues is fake, I'm like, what? I know what I feel. Oh. I know what I have. So I remember just, that particular day they taught about speaking in tongues, and then when I came in, I met them in the meeting. I remember very well. And then they said, oh, if you've not spoken in tongues, come and stay here, stay in the middle. And I remember just staying in the middle, like, okay, let me see what's gonna happen. And I remember they laid hands on me and I started to feel fire on the inside of me. This is not a made-up story, real life, truth. I have no reason to lie. So I feeling a fire, and then suddenly I started shaka, and that was it. I was just like that. I didn't speak in tongues like Rabakatosha. It was just kasha. It was it was words that in unintelligible words basically. And I remember the fellowship person saying, oh sister, I saw that you were trying after the fellowship, like, oh, I saw that you were trying to, that's a good one. When you get home, improve on it, pray some more, and I believe that God will give you more utterance. I was like, wow, I was so excited. I got to the hostel, I now knelt and I started praying. I remember one of my school fathers had given me a story about how he also started speaking in tongues, how he was on his own in his room, he started telling God he wanted it, and that was it. He broke out in tongues. So I also did the same, and that was it. My tongues started improving, and that was it. That was my journey into the faith, into salvation. And I'm not going to say that it was smooth. In 400 level, I still dated people I wasn't supposed to date. I still was with people. I remember my friend telling me, I'm so disappointed. I didn't expect you to be with somebody like that. And I was like, what's your own? I want to change him. Anyway, we're going to talk about relationship matters too in this series, so stay tuned. Anyway, I said I'm going to change him, yada yada yada. My dears, the day God told me break off that nonsense relationship, I immediately did it. And that's one thing about obedience. Remember, we're talking about following God's way, following God's plan, obedience. So anyway, I feel like God's will and God's plan for salvation of my soul, he pulled me in by himself. So that's really how I got born again. So just like me, some of you may have this kind of story where it's not like, oh, somebody preached to you particularly, or you had a radical transformation. Your own might have been gradual, just like mine. And let me tell you guys part of the story. I remember that there was a time I started feeling guilty because I was in a particular church, and I remember my workers coordinator saying, oh, if you don't have a date to say this is the day I got born again, yeah, I'm not really sure you are really born again. And I started to feel bad, like, I don't have a date. Oh, I can't even say this is the day. It just happened. And my cousin told me that, you can, when they call out a call, you can go out now. It doesn't mean that even that the Adeboye sometimes is still going out. I'm like, I was naive. So I said, okay. So the next time, for some reason, and I told God, okay, the next time in church, if pastor should call an altar call, I will know that it's God that wants me to come out, and I will stand up. My brothers and sisters, that's how the next Sunday, my pastor, after preaching, called an altar call. My mind started telling me, remember you said you will stand up. I feel like that was also a move of obedience, and God, teaching me something in that moment, because I raised my hand. I was shy at first, though, I'm not going to lie. But I was like, no shame. So I raised my hand, and then I knelt down. I remember just saying, God, I know I'm already saved, but I just want this day to be the day that I know that, okay, this was the moment. Funny things, I can't even still remember the date. I think I became mature to know that it's not really a point. But yeah, so that was the day that I also rededicated my life. But after that moment, I started seeking knowledge. I started interacting with books. I remember reading Kenneth Hagin books. They started saying that I was Kenneth Haginer at one point, because I was a Kenneth Hagin fan. Like, I read most of his books. I read about the Holy Spirit, read about following God's will, following God's plan for your life. I read about having a relationship with God. And I started to learn that, it's not by going for altar call. If you are saved, you are saved. You are not losing your salvation because you feel guilty, right? I just want to say that if you don't have a salvation story like me, don't feel guilty, right? Don't feel that, because I did not abort in the past, I did not do this, I did not do that. Maybe most of the time, people who share gory salvation stories, they like to share like sexual related salvation stories. But even if you did not do all of that, it doesn't mean that God did not save you. Trust me, you were gossiping, you were lying. Sin is inherent in everyone's nature until you accept Christ. Because sin is first about nature than it is about your doings. So you were lying, you were gossiping, you were probably having envy, anger, all these things. They are all fruits of sin. So you don't have to have been delivered from pornography or abortion before you know that yes, you have a salvation story. That story of yours, that little drops of you following God, it is something that can save another person. And those that have the story too, it is still good. God uses all of our stories to whip us and to weave us into something beautiful. This is day 3 of following God's will. What did you learn today? Tell me about your salvation story. Is it dramatic? Is it, I want to know in the comment section. Remember to subscribe. Yes, subscribing is free. Like, hit that subscribe button. Hit that bell beside it. And I'll see you same time tomorrow on day 4.